Hi everyone, Dr. Shook here. Hope you're doing well today. In today's live stream, what I want to do is share with you how low progesterone could cause hypothyroid symptoms. And I'm going to tell you that what we're going to talk about here, very few people understand this. And the only reason I understand it's because I've had some really brilliant teachers and I just got lucky. So I'm going to share it with you guys because I know how important it is and how life-changing it can be. So your doctors are not going to understand this. I mean, like 99.999% are not going to know this, and that's okay. This is not classically taught physiology, but nonetheless, it's a big reason that a lot of people don't feel well. A lot of women do not feel well, and that they have hypothyroid symptoms, even with normal labs or even when they're taking thyroid hormone replacement. And so this is something that we need to talk about and you need to understand, and I'm going to try to explain it to you as simply as possible. So the first thing that you need to understand is progesterone is the main thing that we're talking about here. Okay, so progesterone is a hormone that women produce, men produce as well, but women produce it at different amounts throughout the month, okay, with their cycle. And there are a lot of things that can throw off the progesterone levels, and progesterone is really important for thyroid hormone activity. So let me first explain to you how progesterone is made. There's a pathway, a biochemical pathway. It's real simple. I've already got it drawn up here. I didn't complicate it, just made it as simple as possible so you can understand some of the connections that we're going to want to talk about, okay? And then I want to share with you how progesterone contributes to thyroid hormone activity, okay? And how it's important. It'll make sense once we get into it a little bit. So it all starts with cholesterol. Who knew that cholesterol was so important? Everybody, most of the time, the only time your doctor talks about cholesterol is when there's a problem with it, right? When it's too high. We got to be really careful with cholesterol though, because it's very, very important. It is the backbone for all of our steroid hormones. And the main ones you're going to see here, the main steroid hormones that we're going to talk about are progesterone, your stress hormone cortisol, and testosterone and estrogen. So I want you to understand that if you think of this as a waterfall, and cholesterol is at the top of the waterfall and these are down below it. If cholesterol is too low, might you not have enough progesterone? Might you not have enough testosterone, estrogen, and maybe even cortisol? Yes, because cortisol is the backbone. So you have to have adequate cortisol. And if you don't have enough cortisol, you may not be able to synthesize these hormones. And then you'll have all kinds of hormonal issues. And as you're going to see, you can even have thyroid problems from this, okay? So cholesterol is converted into the mother hormone. It's pregnenolone. Pregnenolone is what we call the mother hormone. As you can see, it's the fork in the road. Pregnenolone converts into progesterone, to cortisol, and to DHEA. Okay, DHEA is a hormone that then converts into testosterone and estrogen, okay? So pregnenolone, the key thing to understand here is that it is shared. Okay, it is shared amongst these hormones. So this is where our story gets interesting. Pregnenolone can be depleted, and you may not have enough pregnenolone to make DHEA or testosterone or estrogen, but also progesterone, the main topic of our story. You may not have enough pregnenolone to make progesterone, and there's a few reasons that this very commonly occurs. Now, cortisol is your stress hormone, okay? It is, your body will always make cortisol over the rest of these hormones, always. So if you're suffering, as a side note, with testosterone or estrogen issues, you have to look at you have to understand this physiology I'm getting ready to explain to you, because this could be the main reason. Cortisol production could be the main reason that these are low, and then you've got to understand why cortisol production may be high. Okay, so let's look at this. So cortisol can be driven up and deplete your pregnenolone, leaving less available for progesterone and DHEA and testosterone through a few mechanisms, primarily stress. Okay, now there are different types of stress. One is inflammatory. Okay, inflammatory stressors. So anything that would drive an inflammatory process within the body, infections, food sensitivities, chemical reactivity, any of those things will drive up cortisol because cortisol is anti-inflammatory. 2, physical pain. I should have just put pain, but anything that drives up pain, if you have chronic pain, it stimulates a sympathetic nervous system response, which is your fight or flight mechanism. When you go into fight or flight, that signals a number of different hormones to be upregulated. One of those is cortisol. So you drive up cortisol, the body will always make cortisol over these other hormones because it keeps you alive, okay? And so physical pain, emotional stress. Okay. So why would emotional stress do it? Well, it's through the same mechanism that physical pain drives up your cortisol. It's through the autonomic nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight mechanism. When you activate your fight or flight mechanism, what does it do? It drives up cortisol. That means you're going to take more pregnenolone from the bucket that's available, and you're going to deplete progesterone, DHEA, testosterone, and estrogen will be typically lower because you are doing, this is a cortisol or pregnenolone steal. Okay, you're stealing it away to make more of it because of these factors. Number 4, a big one. Blood sugar. Blood sugar. I can't tell you how commonly we see problems with blood sugar that are driving this process. So commonly. And people will go to their doctors. People will go to doctors and they'll say, you've got chronic fatigue and all these other things, and we're going to use all these herbs and do all this other stuff. And the first thing that they should do, that they don't do, is say, your blood sugar is the primary issue here. Until we get your blood sugar right, none of these herbs make a difference. Nothing else makes a difference. Get your blood sugar right, then we'll see what happens here, because once you stop stealing away pregnenolone to make cortisol, these levels will typically rise, and you don't have to do anything except stabilize blood sugar. No special herbs, no special anything. You focus on blood sugar, okay? This is why I try to focus so heavily on foundational biochemistry, because in today's world, everyone's talking about genetics and parasites and everything else. And a lot of people have those problems. But guess what? The doctors are addressing and treating all of these other issues, and the person has major issues with anemia, blood sugar, high inflammatory load, that they could be doing other things and that they need to be addressing separately, primarily because they mimic and they can create a lot of the symptoms that you might think are coming from the parasite or the genetic issues. People are getting ahead of themselves. Doctors are not focusing on the foundation. And they might not understand that. And that's okay. I don't understand some of the things that they do, but I do understand this, that I see so many people today that need foundational physiological problems addressed before anything else. And it doesn't sound as exotic as, some very rare genetic, polymorphism or uniqueness or parasite that might be trendy right now. But guess what? It's what gets people well. It's what gets people well. And so we focus on the foundation. I'll get off my soapbox there, but it's really important because so many times I see this. So understand that this mechanism is happening where cortisol is being produced, depleting pregnenolone, leaving you with less progesterone. Now this is important. Should have probably told you this earlier, but this is important because progesterone helps to increase thyroid hormone. So if you don't have enough progesterone, you won't have as much thyroid hormone, because progesterone, what progesterone does is it increases TPO activity, thyroid peroxidase, which is an enzyme in the thyroid that, by the way, is the common target for the immune system with Hashimoto's, right? You have TPO, antibodies, right? That causes you to destroy this enzyme, so you can't manufacture T4 and T3 as well, and your thyroid hormone's lower. So progesterone increases TPO activity, therefore increasing thyroid hormone. Now it's important to understand that on labs, you're typically not going to see this as a lab low T4 or lab low T3. This is just going to be lower activity, so it's going to be on the lower end of normal. Okay, it's important to understand that. Now, a lot of women will understand how this works, and they'll say, oh yeah, I get it, because during ovulation, there's an increase in body temperature. If you've ever tried to, figure out when you're ovulating, you can check your temperature, and typically the temperature goes up because why? because progesterone increases TPO activity, increasing metabolic rate. So your body temperature goes up a little bit, okay? So the question that you have to answer though is, when this is breaking down, is why is progesterone low? These things, right? Anything that drives an inflammatory response. So what we commonly see here driving like the inflammatory response is what? Autoimmunity, typically like a thyroid autoimmunity, but any type of autoimmune process, infections, we see food sensitivities, and then we see chemicals, chemical reactivity, chemical immune reactivity. Just going to put chem. Physical pain, emotional stress, these all drive what? Sympathetic nervous system, so that's your fight or flight mechanism, which does what? Ramps up cortisol, adrenaline, and causes you to pull more pregnenolone to cortisol, leaving less for DHEA, less for progesterone. Therefore, lower progesterone, lower thyroid hormone stimulation, lower activity of TPO, and insufficient stimulatory effect, okay? The number one reason, the thing I want you to take home today, the number one reason for low progesterone is blood sugar. Blood sugar. I know it's not a sexy answer, but it is what it is. This is the primary reason that we see progesterone low, because what happens is that blood sugar gets low. When blood sugar gets low, what does the body do? The body, the brain, activates your adrenal glands to produce cortisol. Why does it do that? Because cortisol stimulates the release of blood sugar that's stored in your muscles and in your liver. So it breaks them down and dumps them into the bloodstream and raises blood sugar so that your brain can continue running the bodily functions and keeping you alive, right? You know, if you've been hypoglycemic or you've had low blood sugar, what happens to you, right? You get clammy, shaky, nauseous even. That's because you have an increase in catecholamine production, cortisol, and epinephrine. Those catecholamines are produced as a way to activate the breakdown of your glycogen, the stored blood sugar, and dump it back into the bloodstream to raise blood sugar. So blood sugar fluctuations, if your blood sugar's swinging like this, up and down, which it doesn't matter if you're insulin resistant, this still happens because typically people will go without eating and they'll use a lot of stimulants, and there's a lot of things that can contribute to this, and it swings up and down. Even though you might not get nauseous or vomit or have any of those symptoms, maybe you're just not as mentally sharp a little bit, maybe your vision gets a little blurry, but you might not feel shaky, and you may not connect that to low blood sugar or to blood sugar fluctuations. But the brain will activate more cortisol production, depleting the pregnenolone. You won't have enough progesterone. And then there's all these problems with women's cycles that occur, and you can bring it almost always back to blood sugar. Always back to blood sugar. So you have to stabilize blood sugar. If nothing other than just eating frequently, not going a long time without meals, not skipping lunch, or not skipping breakfast, not waiting too long to eat. These are things that are really helpful. And sometimes people are they're just not aware that that's happening to them. And usually we can pick this out through history, health history, but a lot of times we can see on blood work too that's occurring, and someone may not know it. So I hope this has been helpful in explaining how low progesterone could cause hypothyroid symptoms. It's really important because this is very much connected to so many other hormonal problems with women. And it comes back right here to the stressors, and did I leave off an S? I did, didn't I? That contribute to cortisol being produced excessively, okay, depleting the pregnenolone that's should be available for the other hormones. So anyway, I hope this helps you out. I hope it hasn't been too complicated. But if you need help with anything, guys, I work with people around the world, across the United States. I help them look at their case. We help them get advanced diagnostic testing if needed. and really, try to complement what their other healthcare providers are doing and give them another perspective on this. We really try to help you understand some of these underlying mechanisms that your other healthcare providers may not be aware of, and try to work with you guys as a team to try to help you, give you the best opportunity to get your health back. So if you have any questions, you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out to us, post questions, comments, and we will do our best to respond. But I hope this has been helpful. Look forward to talking